and I had to completely reinvent myself. I studied science and thought I would be maybe win the Nobel Prize, right? And be a big academic, discover something wonderful, and got pretty far with it. Got a PhD. There was a real business opportunity in frozen foods. I don't know, just something that was super fun, and I've always had the entrepreneurship bug. So I quit my teaching job, and then I decided to dedicate myself full time to this. Right now, we just opened a brand new factory, actually a new plant. We had, from the incubator kitchen, about 18 months into our growth, we moved into a space that already existed just outside DC. My recipe of revenue, it's more than anything.
Hi, Margarita. How are you doing today? So good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here today.
Yeah, I am super excited to chat with you about your business today, MasPanadas, and hear your story and share your story with everybody out there. I know we had a chance to talk a couple weeks ago, and I was just so empowered by your whole origin story of the business and how you have grown it. So excited to have you share that story with everybody today. So why don't we just kind of kick it off? Why don't you just kind of tell me how it all came about?
So our origin story, how it all started with MasPanadas. If we go a little bit further back in time, I'm originally Colombian, and never thought really that I would be here talking about being a CPG company and making food and running a business. I had a completely sense of what my life would be like, but then things don't necessarily work the way you think it will, right? And
Right.
life can take so many different twists and turns. My family was extorted by a guerrilla group called FARC in Colombia. And so we had to leave. And I came to the US now 24 years ago as pretty much a refugee. Was very
Wow.
lucky, though, that I was able to, at that point, I was in college, first year of college, and I was able to transfer and come on a student visa and in a much better way that many people have to. And I
Yeah.
had to completely reinvent myself. I studied science and thought I would be maybe win the Nobel Prize, right? And be a big academic, discover something wonderful, and got pretty far with it. Got a PhD, even went to do postdoctoral work. But then
Mhm.
once I had children, things changed dramatically, and that's when I realized how difficult really it is to be away from family, from community. I was
Yeah,
at some
especially sciences where you have to be in a lab, 7 days a week.
and 24 hours a day, you never finish. It's very competitive, very cutthroat.
Yeah.
And I took some time to teach, and thinking that would be a little easier, had two young boys and a newborn, and was ready to
Yeah.
jump out the window.
Yeah, just throw on a big teaching schedule on top of it.
Why not, right?
No big deal.
So I had a friend of the family come from Colombia to help me out,
Mhm.
and in order to help her kind of make her life and remain in the US, I started what was supposed to be a small catering company
Mhm.
that would provide her a job as a chef and the option for a work visa.
Yeah.
And it was to be really a small, tiny thing for friends and neighbors out of my home kitchen. And I
Mhm.
had honestly no sense what I was getting into. And turns out you can't even get licenses and permits from in Maryland from your kitchen. So we joined Union Kitchen, an incubator kitchen in DC, where you had access to a shared commercial kitchen. And so we went there, started the catering business, realized pretty soon that within our menu, empanadas were bestsellers and that there was a real business opportunity in frozen foods.
Yeah.
We could not get the visa for her. Regulations for that type of visa change. She goes back to Colombia, but at that point, I'm like, this is so much fun and so fulfilling, and it's like adrenaline, and you see something tangible that you're building, and it's I don't know, just something that was super fun, and I've always had the entrepreneurship bug. So I quit my teaching job, and
Mhm.
then I decided to dedicate myself full time to this, and here we
Wow.
are.
your family think going from a PhD to I'm going to have this food startup?
They thought I had lost my mind. They actually pulled in an intervention because you could have like you have a PhD. I also got in the process an MBA. I love studying. I love learning. But um, you could do so much, get an amazing job, have stability, and instead you're taking a street food that's just like all over. It's like, I don't know,
Yeah,
pretzels, right? And you're going
right.
to sell it in the United States as a frozen food? Like, why
Yeah.
would that make sense? You're wasting your life, you're wasting your potential.
Oh,
They
wow.
see things differently now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they've changed their tune. So, how long did it take in that journey for them to say, "Hey, she's onto something"?
A few years, I think not till we started making some real progress, getting some real traction, making sufficient money that, hey, she's onto something.
Hmm.
So not too very long ago, so about 5 years into the journey is when they finally say like, are you still looking for investors?
Ah, nice. So, yeah, tell us about how the financial part of all this. Like, starting a food company is very expensive. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of hurdles to get over it. So, did you self finance to begin with? Did you go to a bank? How did that work?
It's been a little bit of everything, and certainly one of the hardest pieces and continues to be one of the biggest challenges. It's something I did not anticipate really how expensive it is to grow a consumer packaged goods company.
Yeah.
So we started self-funding,
Hmm.
and you can only go so far with that, right? Bootstrapping, especially
Yeah.
once you start doing, because we manufacture, so we're self-manufacturers, so we have a bit more flexibility with what we can do. So we started actually with food service, and that was pretty reasonable. And even
Hmm.
before we launched retail, but very small as a local brand, very sort of uh, let it grow organically. So that was manageable. We started in private label. We even broke even. We actually made money one year,
Yeah.
like very fairly early on. Then like,
Yeah.
let's go retail. There's the brand, and it's the
Ah,
sexy
fuel
thing.
for fire.
And that changes things completely because it
Mhm.
eats a lot of cash. So we did a seed round,
Mhm.
mostly angels, a couple family office, some individuals. We
Mhm.
also got loans, some for the manufacturing aspect,
Yeah.
equipment, etc. And now we are doing a Series A.
Exciting, exciting times. So, what is your plans with continued growth of the business from where it is now?
Well, take over the world one empanada at a time, of course.
Of course.
So right now we just opened a brand new factory, actually a new plant. We had from the incubator kitchen about 18 months into our growth, we moved into a space that already existed just outside DC. That was already a small manufacturing and banana manufacturing plant that we took over. And then we grew within that space, had a couple other bays, but it was really convoluted. The line would twist around. There were
Mm,
holes in the line. There's fans to cool down things. There's a little bit of duct tape here, a couple popsicle sticks over there. But if you make it work, right? And
yeah.
that's one of the largest loan we have is an SBA loan. Then
Hmm.
for building this new place, and it's difference between sky and earth really because this time it's custom made. It's a double the size of the space. It's all in a single line, all the right
Right.
equipment. Still not perfect. There's still obviously ways to make it better, but it's a
Right.
hundred times better than when we had before, and you can really tell the difference. So now we have a lot more capacity,
Hmm.
and we want to hit that right balance between the different channels we have. So continue growing the brand, but within reason,
Yeah.
while also growing our private label or growing our
Hmm.
food service so that we are sustainable, grow towards sustainability pretty quickly, rather
Right.
than being a pure CPG brand, just marketing sales and continuously running red and needing that input and money on a continuous basis.
Right. Yeah. So, in that sort of balance between building your brand and the private label, what have been some of the challenges you faced?
They're very different animals.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to see why there's very large co-packers that only do co-packing and don't have a brand. uh,
Right.
yeah, so there's certainly challenges in combining both because the needs are fairly different, to the point
Mhm.
where the way we're starting to evolve towards managing, it's all still the same company, but
Mhm.
a sense of you have a core company that's the manufacturing, and then you have the brand that's using the services of that manufacturing. So it becomes a little bit easier to sort of walk around it. Um, requires different expertise. And so in the end, it's using more resources. But I think now with a new plant and a more appropriate team, we've learned so much over the last few years. I think we'll be
Mhm.
able to do it. There's other manufacturers now. It wasn't so easy to find somebody that could make empanadas, and now
Mhm.
there's more options. But we specialize more in the very small empanadas
Yeah.
and more premium level, artisanal level. That's our edge really compared
Yeah.
to others, and that's also the focus of our brand.
That's a good segue for me to actually hold up one of them, because yes, when I did open the package, which I'll hold up as well. So yes, I went to Stop and Shop is where I bought them, and so I got the chicken and vegetable, and I was like, oh, they're so cute in little bite size empanadas. So as I had mentioned to you, I lived in New Mexico for 14 years, and they have a really big farmers market there, and there's a couple of vendors that sell empanadas there, so we would always go down there and buy them. Especially, my husband loves like the sweet ones, like pumpkin and so on. So, but yeah, I was surprised when I took a bite of it, just how good the dough was, for being a frozen product, and heating it back up. I was like, oh, these are delicious. So did you, I'm going to go back and ask about your family again. So did you practice different recipes on them, or is empanadas part of your like a family recipe that you just kind of expanded upon?
So empanadas is, you can compare the way empanadas are perceived across Latin America, the way Americans will see barbecue sauce. So if I tell you barbecue, well, you know what barbecue is, and everybody you talk to will know, but you might be thinking like North Carolina style, right?
Uh-huh.
There's somebody
Yep.
that's thinking like, oh, Texas style. Somebody thinking like, no, it's on the sweeter side. It's no, it needs more acid. And everyone has a sense like, no, this is the real one, right? It's the same. There are, yeah, there's so many different varieties across Latin America and even within a single country. I grew up making empanadas in my father's kitchen, so he had restaurants when I was growing up. And
Mhm.
it's a very traditional dish in Colombia, usually an appetizer, hors d'oeuvre kind of thing. They're made with corn dough, and the typical filling is a potato and beef mix.
Mhm.
And so it was something that came out of the kitchen constantly, and it's very fun to make. So I would hang out and have fun with it.
Yeah.
But then who I learned to make empanadas from really was an Argentinian. Very
Ah,
different style. Yeah.
okay.
So it's a wheat crust, different types of fillings. So say the standard beef filling, that's one of the most popular ones, has egg and olive
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
lots of also onion, right? And they're usually
Mhm.
baked. If you
Uh-huh.
talk to, say, somebody from Dominican Republic, they'll think more of something they call cativias, a type of empanada made with yuca dough. If you talk to Bolivians, they have a very classical one called salteña. That's a thicker, sweeter dough, and the feeling is soupy. It's almost like a soup,
Oh,
like a giant soup dumpling, but with a wheat dough.
version of an empanada. Yeah.
Exactly. So the ones we make are our own. They're not exactly any given tradition.
Yeah.
We, they're probably closer to a Cuban pastelito,
Mm-hmm.
but we have the wheat flour, the wheat dough. We They are fried, but it's a deep fry very fast. It does in our oil doesn't our sorry our dough has very little oil to start with, so it has the
Yeah.
same amount of oil of fat than a
Yeah.
baked empanada does. But then they're
Uh-huh.
much easier for you to prepare because they're already sealed on the outside, right, to keep the crunchiness.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to develop. So I started with that classical because it's an easier entry. I think in the US, there were already Argentine empanadas. People were used to that sort of format. We started with that Argentinian empanada and little by little tested that product. Well, how do people like this kind of filling or the setup? Like, first thing we eliminated the classical things to have lard, pork lard on
Mm-hmm.
your,
Right.
that's the fat on your dough. That's the first
Yeah.
thing that went away. Nobody really wants nowadays. I mean, it's delicious, but
Right.
nobody wants it around, right? We took out the olives, we took out the egg, add
Mm-hmm.
instead more tomatoes, add instead red bell pepper.
Mm-hmm.
So the recipe evolved, and funny detail there. Even though I run the company,
Yep.
there's the man actually. Now that we mentioned, it. My husband's the one that is the actual uh, does most of the cooking in our home and has more of a chef profile, and he
Yeah.
has had an important role in helping to modify those recipes.
Yeah, well, good collaboration. You kind of each bring, your different skill sets to the table there, literally.
Exactly. Yes, it's a collaboration like everything else.
Yeah. And so, what do your kids think of the business now? And are they, involved at all with, I'm sure on the taste testing side.
They are more than the tasting side. I mean, they eat a lot of them constantly.
Yeah.
And yeah, three boys, now especially the oldest in the teenage years, and does a lot of sports. He's like a vacuum cleaner. He's just
Oh
can
yeah.
never have enough food. So these are great because they stick the bag themselves in the air fryer, push the button, and 10 minutes later, so they can do it on their own, very easy. They're eating something that's good for them. It's real
Yes.
food. It's actual meats and vegetables. They feel, I think, a sense of ownership. They feel proud of the business. There were times, especially in the pandemic, they had to go with me to the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we were open, we were running, and they had to go, and
Yeah.
so they would help in the packaging line very often, assemble the cartons.
Oh, how fun.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and so they know exactly what goes on right there. And many times they've been there, learned incredible lessons that you wouldn't learn anywhere else. Say at some point, then he was maybe 12, so my oldest had to sit down with me on a conversation with an employee that I had discovered had that's when marijuana had just been legalized in DC, where in
Mm-hmm.
Maryland it was not legal at that point then. But
Mm-hmm.
he had offered marijuana to a 16-year-old intern that we had a summer. So, of course, completely unacceptable. And we fired him on the spot. And my
Mm-hmm.
son was sitting in the office and heard this whole conversation. So,
Well, talk about a life lesson.
exactly. So much more impactful, I think, that the conversation at school, like, don't do drugs.
Right. Right. I mean, there's a literal consequence. Wow.
Yeah, and they've learned so many. I hadn't realized really how much they have absorbed. So, same 12-year-old at that point, I take him as a helper to a small
Mhm.
expo that we had at Union Kitchen. And he was
Yeah.
supposed to be in the back helping to prepare the empanadas. And we had so many people come through that he ended up also talking to people.
Yeah.
And I get a message from the representative for a large distributor. She had not had the opportunity to talk to me. She talked to him and was very impressed with the pitch
Yeah.
that he
Oh,
did as a
good.
12-year-old.
That goes to show you how important it is for everybody on your team, no matter how old they are, to know what the pitch is.
Exactly.
So, as you've developed those relationships with distributors and the retail stores, how's that journey been with you? You're in Whole Foods and you're in Stop and Shop and these big retailers. How did you start to establish those relationships and grow with them?
So it evolves through time. And it was very different what it was at the beginning to what it is now. But really, in the end, it's a snowball effect. The more
Mm.
success you have, the more success comes your way. And the very difficult part, the most difficult, it's that start because it's that first push to get that teeny snowball going.
Yeah.
And I think uh, my first thought is like, well, you walk to Whole Foods and you say, hello, Whole Foods, here I am, and I have a great product. Then you realize,
Yeah.
like, well, where do you produce? Do you have this and that? Are you in our distributor? And so, like, no, that's how do you get there? So you see this huge void. Well, the trick is you don't start with Whole Foods or any retail chain. You start
Right.
with the corner store that's
Mm-hmm.
run by just the owner that's had it there for 30 years.
Yeah.
They tend to be much more flexible. You talk to
Mm-hmm.
the owner that's making the decisions, and they don't need all these registrations on GS1 and I don't know, One World Sync and all this stuff. And you can deliver to them themselves, yourself, or it can be a small distributor that then you start working with. But once you
Mm-hmm.
have that one store and you say, I'm doing well over there, and you're
Yeah.
not necessarily the first, right? So much is like, okay, I'll talk to you. So you go into a second store and get a third store. And then maybe you consider a small chain of independents. And then you walk to Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And you could say, see, this is a product that's already in market, and I've learned many of the pieces that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
My packaging is well developed. I have all the regulatory aspects under control.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to also talk to the distributor at the same time, right? It's the egg and the chicken, because then they'll say, like, wait, we need you on your distributor. The distributor says, well, you're not in any retail stores. So work those two to get them to align and finally be able to sort of start the two, telling them both, I'm not yet there, but I'm doing very good progress. Be patient with me. And once you start getting these larger chains, or, you know, with Whole Foods, it's one of the advantages that they have this path for local brands. It's so much easier once you can show velocity, once you can show a little bit of traction,
Yeah.
then those conversations become easier and easier, and you start learning the system, right? And be able to hire somebody that can help with sales and has more of that experience to start learning
Mm-hmm.
about, well, the review process, right? How do you actually pitch properly? What are the
Right.
expectations in terms of trade spend and promotion? What are they really looking for? You have to go and also understand what they have on shelf already, how you fit, because if you are going in, someone else is
Mm-hmm.
going out. So it's all these tricks, but the essential sort of overall uh, uh, philosophy, really approach for me, is start small, do little steps, and learn from each little iterations, and then you can take bigger and bigger steps.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. Uh, so you kind of mentioned on the sales side, and I wanted to ask you about, developing your team. So as you've grown, how have you gone about, finding people to come into the company, and have they come from other food brands, or did you kind of help develop people internally to take on more roles? What's been your strategy there?
So a bit of both, actually. And so as manufacturing, we have more employees.
Hmm.
So, and I'm a big advocate for giving people the opportunity to grow. So, say for example, a member of our management team currently, he does procurement and inventory management. He started 5 years ago as an 18-year-old making dough. He would
Yeah.
just be his, that was his role. You make the dough. And
Hmm.
nowadays he sits in the office in front of the computer, run Excel spreadsheets, buys
Yeah.
the stuff we need, runs our inventory. So give people that option, that track is something that I think is so important. And you have team members that know so well the business in and out and all the aspects around it, have
Absolutely.
grown with the business and have a true commitment and are going to go the extra mile for sure.
Yeah.
So that's about 3/4 of our team in management.
Hmm.
Um, then once we got to a certain size, I needed a little bit more expertise, because this idea of the small steps and the iterations when you learn by trial and error,
Hmm.
it's excellent when you're very little, and make as many mistakes as you can when you're
Yeah.
little, because you're not going to fall far and you're going to learn a lot. Once you get to a
Great.
certain size, you want to avoid a little bit so much the
Keep
trial.
those mistakes to a minimum. They get, as somebody told me recently, as the bigger you grow, the more costly the mistakes are.
Exactly, exactly. So then have to come to terms with what you're good at and what you're not good at, and what you know and what you don't know. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, so it gets a little bit hard. But then that's when I considered it was definitely important to bring people that had more experience in
Hmm.
in the food industry and could help us scale up without making these bigger dangerous mistakes. So we hired a somebody in operations, somebody in sales, and somebody in food safety quality assurance were the three team members that came up from outside and had significant
Hmm.
experience beforehand.
Yeah. And have you felt that that's really accelerated your growth and ability to scale much faster by bringing those folks in?
I think so. Yes, for sure. We've grown very much faster since then.
Hmm.
It still doesn't mean it's perfect, right? Everyone's human. Everybody makes mistakes, but you always learn from them and make sure you don't do them again. And but it's a balance. It's also very easy to get a little bit eager and say, well, I'm growing fast. It's like kids, right? You don't buy
Yeah.
them the shoes that fit them just right because they're going to wear them a month and then you need to buy new shoes. So but
Right.
how big should the shoes be? You don't want them tripping on those big shoes either. And
Hmm.
it's very easy once you get set this mind, like, now I'm going to build my team.
Yeah.
ask really carefully, do I really see this person going to make that big of a difference that it's
Yeah.
worth bringing them now? Because you can easily overhire and then your overhead becomes a little bit too heavy.
Right. Oh, I totally agree with that. That's probably I find to be one of the most challenging parts of being a business owner is getting your team to be the right skill set and the right size that fits your cash flow and projections for, your growth in the short term there. So yeah, very big challenge. I'm sure that a lot of people face. Um, so before we wrap up today, I want to hear a little bit more about your product line and kind of what your plans are for the future. So I know, again, I'll bring up, so the chicken and vegetables, one of your flavors. So tell us about the other flavors that you have.
So that's one of our best sellers with the beef empanadas.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably 60% of our sales. We also have a cheese empanada we launched recently. It's been exclusive at Sprouts and then going to launch this year with many other retailers. So it's been quite successful. See it in the background is a blue
Yes.
bag. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's our newest. And it has a corn shell. So it's starting to get a little bit more out there. What I want to be able to do is showcase the diversity of flavors and the culture and stories behind empanadas
Yeah.
that represent different traditions across Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the core is fairly basic, right? So chicken and beef, it's everywhere. The cheese is
Yeah.
very traditional also. We have also a vegan empanada, so all vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a pizza one that I think it's one, the next one we're going to refresh.
Mm-hmm.
But we have now slightly different versions, same flavors, but even smaller bite size for club. We've done now 2 rotations at Costco with the chicken and the beef.
Yeah.
And we're launching also breakfast. That's the next big piece. And we'll put us in
Perfect.
a slightly different place in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we are going to start growing more our on the sort of food service size, more bulk presence in deli is the next place. We want to be able to, yes, we're at our core a brand in frozen, right?
Yeah.
But we can be in different doors in frozen, but it can be an item that can be slacked and also grab and go.
Yeah.
So we have, versus your typical frozen brand, we can have presence in different places and grow that brand that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Smart strategic moves. Yeah, and I think the breakfast version of it would be very successful. I know more than half the times of the week, my daughter is eating breakfast in the car on the way to school, and we're always
Exactly.
trying to figure out what's the most nutritious thing she can eat, the least messy for the car, and she can eat it in the 12-minute drive that we have between our house and her school.
Exactly. And then it doesn't take you long to prep either, right? And with
Exactly.
MasPanadas, you can have it all because mas is more and more is better.
Perfect. So, any last words of wisdom? Your secret sauce, your recipe to revenue that you want to share with everybody today?
My recipe of revenue. It's more than anything recipe for entrepreneurship and success on the daily grind is grit.
Yeah.
Is believe in yourself, believe in your passion, but do make decisions also with a cold head and based on numbers. Be as quantitative as you can. And you're
Mm-hmm.
never 100% sure, right? But the more
Yeah.
information, real information you have, and then the
Mm-hmm.
rest just guided with your heart, it's the best
Yes.
decision you can make.
Yes. How the heart and the head work together.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Margarita. It was such a great conversation. I love what you're doing. I love your product. I am excited to share your story with everybody. So thank you for joining me today on Recipe to Revenue.
Well, thank you so much.